So when I started working on a documentary about the trailblazing African American women who integrated pro wrestling in the 1950s, I made a soundtrack to keep me motivated and inspired to get the story out to the world of these pioneering women and the boundaries that they broke. Music has always been a big part of my life, and sometimes people actually pick up on how much I love music. One time I met the band Ambrosia, who's famous for the songs You're the Only Woman and The Biggest Part of Me. And one of the musicians in the band actually asked me if I was a musician because we were talking at a meet and greet when they came to my home state of Ohio. And I guess I seemed so knowledgeable about music that he assumed I was a musician, but I gave him my stock reply whenever someone asked me if I'm a musician, which is the only thing I play is the radio. Anywho, I say all that to say that music has always been a big part of my life. And as a writer and filmmaker, music is integral to my books, movies, and plays. So when I started working on a documentary about the trailblazing African American women who integrated pro wrestling in the 1950s, Lady Wrestler, the amazing untold story of African American women in the ring, I made a soundtrack to keep me motivated and inspired to get the story out to the world of these pioneering women and the boundaries that they broke. So in a series of videos, I'm going to break down to you the songs on my Lady Wrestler soundtrack and explain their significance. So the first song I'm going to break down is Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves by Aretha Franklin and Annie Lennox from the Eurythmics. Now this song came out in the mid 80s, and needless to say, the themes of female empowerment and women taking control of their own destiny is extremely relevant to the story of the African American lady wrestlers. But there's an additional significance because the term sister has a dual meaning when it comes to the African American lady wrestlers. First of all, the African American community long ago began referring to each other as brother and sister in a show of solidarity that we stick together in the face of racism, discrimination, and oppression. And the word sister also relates to the story of these African American lady wrestlers because the core of the story is about three sisters, three actual blood sisters, Babs Wingo, Ethel Johnson, and Marva Scott, who were among the first women to integrate pro wrestling in the 1950s. And these women grew up in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. Of course, these women being from my hometown really inspired me. And when a friend of mine, another African-American man named Terry Anderson, who works in public relations, introduced me to Ethel Johnson, who was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this year in 2021. And I found out about all these amazing ladies and the fact that Ethel and her sisters had gone all around the world, breaking down barriers and shattering glass ceilings. I was beyond inspired. So it's sort of self-explanatory why the song Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves made it to my Lady Wrestler soundtrack. But I just kind of wanted to share with you why I decided to include that song. And another reason that it made the soundtrack is that Annie Lennox is, of course, a British artist. She was a British artist who, like many of the British pop stars of the 80s, were inspired by African-American soul music. And the lady wrestlers were international stars. They went all over the world, from Tokyo to Australia. It makes perfect sense that an international artist like Annie Lennox, and of course, Aretha Franklin was an international superstar as well. I mean, she was, of course, beloved by the African-American community, but Aretha Franklin is a legend all over the world. So that gives you a little bit of insight into the reason why Sisters Are Doing It For Themselves made it to the Lady Wrestler soundtrack. Thank you for watching.